Good morning on this Sunday, June 2nd. Here's a look at our top stories on the Georgia gang. 4 major studios weigh in on Georgia's heartbeat bill, but stop short of packing up and heading out of the state for now. A former candidate for governor pleads guilty to fraud charges, and 9 Gwinnett County educators are out of a job after an investigation into cheating on the Georgia milestones. Alexis and Theron are here, and Brian Robinson is filling in for Phil. Welcome.
Thank you.
The debate and discussion start right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Hello, everyone. Major studios are weighing in on the controversy over Georgia's so-called heartbeat bill. The studios are threatening to pull out of Georgia unless the courts can stop the law from going into effect. 4 big studio execs made their intentions clear over Georgia's new heartbeat law, which bans most abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. Disney CEO Bob Iger says it would be very difficult for his company to continue productions in Georgia if the courts uphold the law. He said, quote, "I think many people who work for us will not want to work there, and we will have to heed their wishes in that regard. Right now, we are watching it very carefully." Also, Netflix's chief content officer said they would also rethink their decisions to produce content in the state, saying, quote, "We have many women working on productions in Georgia, whose rights, along with millions of others, will be severely restricted by this law." Warner Media and Comcast's NBC Universal also just released very similar statements. And Theron, I want to start with you because these are major companies. They're announcing that they would pull out if the law goes into effect, but money talks here.
Absolutely, and we talked about this last week. I mean, you asked me the question, did I think that the governor thought it was going to be this sort of visceral response? And I think he prepared for it. I mean, I think that he made a promise to his constituents who voted for him, and he carried out that promise. But now what we're seeing, Lori, is that when you start having companies like, Walt Disney and Netflix, and now with the recent statements, I mean, this is getting pretty serious. So I would hope that the governor and the Georgia business community and others need to really get together and figure out a long-term strategy to make sure that the economic impact that we may or may not see on Georgia is not so severe where people are actually losing jobs at a rapid pace.
Brian, you were Governor Deal's deputy chief of staff. Do you think it was the C-list comment, the C-list celebrities comment that kind of riled up the major studios?
No, I don't. And I will say, and I've said before, and I've said to the governor's office, I would have used different language than that if I was writing that speech for Governor Deal, because Governor Kemp has, for the most part, been proactive in his outreach. He did go down to Pinewood Studios. He is meeting with these executives, and he believes that a pro-life culture and the movie industry can exist side by side. And so I think you're going to see more of that kind of messaging coming from him in the future. I don't think the C-list celebrities comment was helpful, but I do think that in by and large, he's taken the right tack on this.
Alexis, what is the message here when these major studios are now, weighing in on the issue?
Well, I think they're very clearly saying that they want to support a woman's right to choose, and whether that's, you call that pro-life or not. I mean, women ought to make her own decision about her own body, and all of these restrictions are just trying to control people, and I think they're also trying to persuade a more religiously conservative group of people who might have an opinion that life starts at conception. And there's not always, there's not any scientific agreement on that, because, and also right now the way the Roe v. Wade states is that abortions can be done until the fetus becomes independent, can live independent of the womb. And that's where it ought to be.
And this is really getting into the debate, but Brian, I want to kind of go back to this business side. If you see major celebrities kind of making these statements, is it going to really impact the studios? And what does the state of Georgia do? Because could it only take one state to pass similar tax breaks, and that would impact Georgia?
Not immediately, and I don't think so. What Georgia has is very unique. It's the most lucrative tax credit for the movie industry in the entire country. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these movie studios sort of soft pedal and speak in nuance on this. They're not saying we're pulling out. They're saying if this takes effect, some of our people won't want to work there, and we have to consider that. That's really different than we're pulling out. They are making a lot of money off of the Georgia tax credit. Money talks. And at the end of the day, they're saying if it takes effect, because I think they believe that the courts will hold it up, as they have similar laws that have taken effect in other states. And so I think that basically what they're doing is appealing to their base in California and in New York, while at the same time keeping that cash cow flowing.
Well, I want to follow up with you, Brian, real quick, because the U.S. Supreme Court may have given us kind of an inkling of what's to come on two cases or cases in Indiana.
Yeah.
Right.
Weigh in on that, because what do you think could happen here?
You know, it was also a nuanced decision. I think the Supreme Court, if it was super eager to jump into this debate, could have taken that case up and made a ruling that would have affected all these other laws that are taking effect all around the country right now. It suggests to me one of two things. They're waiting for a better case that's more definitive and that will give them a clearer path in the future on these issues, or they're not interested in taking it up at all, and they're going to let precedent stand in the district and appeals courts.
Two quick things, though. Let's not act like we don't know that our neighboring state, Louisiana, is not only marketing and reaching out to these music and movie industries, but they're saying, hey, come to Louisiana. We have some of the...
You mean one of our southern?
Yeah, one of our southern state partners. So Louisiana is trying to court...
But they just passed a more restrictive bill.
But then, boom, that's my point. And so now the politics gets in the way of the business interests in the state. And the second thing is, I do want to push back respectfully on Brian's statement about how these people are just appealing to their New York and California donors. No, they said specifically, this is where it's going, Lori, that we have women who work for us who don't like this heartbeat bill. So this is the first time you saw one of these major companies actually go into the meat and the heart of this issue, is that they're looking out for the interests of their employees. Now, Brian just said they want to retain those employees, but we know a lot of these folks who actually are not only just the folks who are behind the scenes, but the people who are in leadership positions in these organizations are women. And so you're starting to see this sort of kind of go into the message that the opposition had for the last really 6 months against this bill.
All right.
We're going to switch gears now to the State Ethics Commission. The head of it, David Amati, has filed subpoenas targeting groups led by Stacey Abrams and the chairwoman of the Democratic Party. Democrats are saying this is obviously all political since Amati is a Republican. Theron, political?
Everything, yes. Look,
Everything is.
Look, when you run for office, and elections has consequences, and you are a person like Stacey Abrams who has put out front and center some of the things that she thinks that went wrong with her election, some of the things that she wants to work with this Republican constitutional-led administration to try to fix. When you have someone now investigating campaign operations, you can't help but inject the politics. Now, what the Abrams campaign did, I think very strategically, is that they immediately turned this back as, you know, hey, we want to position ourselves as being the people who want to run against possibly Governor Kemp in 2022. But they also said that they have assembled a legal team to really make sure they legal this. So it's really kind of a legal pathway to this and also a political pathway. But I would tell you, if someone who's been on campaigns a lot for the last 2 decades, when you start having ethic commissioners looking into every single thing, how money was made, how money was donated, how money was distributed, invoices, expenditures, I mean, this is a very, very serious process that I think they're about to endure.
Brian, you kind of endured this also.
I sure did. Thank you very much. I will point out that when Governor Dill took office, I was dealing with it in 2011. His case on his campaign leapfrogged scores of cases, and they took it up first because it was the most high profile, most important to the state. Stacey Abrams' campaigns and the affiliated groups have been accused of these financial issues for many years. This is not a new thing. So this isn't like out of the blue by any means. She's got these issues. Theron's right. I mean, every major campaign has got some technical issues, right? But these have been ongoing with her. And I want to say that what is most irresponsible about her campaign's response this week was they made it about race. This was an attack on groups led by people of color. That is irresponsible.
It's not. It's not irresponsible.
If it's political, it's Republican, Democrat, that's one thing, which is not. Brian Kemp did not appoint this board that pulls up these cases. He's appointed one of them, and he appointed the executive director. But a board makes these decisions, and it's a bipartisan board. So it's fair what they're doing. Let's judge them on the final product.
Let's do that, but we'll see what they come up with. And I also think that, you know, Stacey Abrams has run very good campaigns. She's as smart as a whip, and she knows what's just illegal and what's not. So, I mean, I just think they're just doing this to keep harassing her so that she can have her name, you know, drugged through this mud.
Well, it's great to hear a Democrat say that investigations are all about character assassination of an executive or a candidate.
But let's be fair, though.
That's not true.
Some of these allegations that
we
were
gotta wrap
made
it up.
against the Abrams campaign and the organization she was affiliated, Brian, they did happen years ago, but she was never, ever indicted, never charged, never, ever filed a complaint against. So, yeah, they have been ongoing, but she has fought them, she's provided information, and she's complied. So this is sort of just a recycling of
Right.
old charges, but not charges that she's been charged on.
Okay, and on that note, we got to wrap for this block. But at first, he claimed he was innocent of fraud charges, but a former candidate for Georgia governor made a guilty plea this week. We'll discuss coming up.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Well, this week, former gubernatorial candidate and state senator Michael Williams will spend no time in jail, but he did plead guilty to fraud charges. Brian, this was really just a bizarre case. I mean, Williams claimed his computers were stolen out of his office and the computers were being used to mine cryptocurrency.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got to wonder, one, that they filed this report, presumably to get insurance money back. But then they went on TV and talked about how the crime was perpetrated. They really brought extra attention to it. Mm-hmm. And if anything, if he's getting indicted, it's partly because they brought more attention to this fraudulent case. If he's guilty, I'm not saying, well, he's saying he's guilty. Yes, forget it. He's saying he's guilty.
Pleaded guilty.
So
Yeah.
to know that what you were doing was fraud and then to go on TV and talk about it is unbelievable.
And of course, he was known as, you know, the candidate who had the deportation buzz. So he brought a lot of attention to his campaign, Theron.
He sure did. I mean, look, you know, when Michael Williams began his governor's race, I mean, he was the most outspoken. I think he was one of the first Trump supporters in the state. I think Bubba McDonald was there right along with him. I know Bubba watches this show, so I don't want to take any credit away from him. But to what we just saw, I mean, to say you're innocent and then to plead guilty, and this is just something that I think that Republicans are analyzing right now. I mean, you have a former Republican state senator, a former gubernatorial candidate for governor who now has pled guilty, who's receiving probation. You have an insurance commissioner who is allegedly has 30 plus counts of insurance fraud, who has, I guess, suspended himself. I don't know if he's officially resigned. So this is just not a good point of, like, you know, around, we talk about corruption on the show, we talk about unethical behavior. These are two Republicans that have actually, one has pled guilty and the other one is being investigated on unethical behavior.
Right. And they need to leave Stacey Abrams alone.
Brian, I thought for sure you were going to bring up Atlanta City Hall, but you didn't.
I mean, you know, Atlanta City Hall, I think the difference is that they're complying with an ongoing investigation. Stuff is coming up and there is investigation, but I'm just saying from an electoral standpoint, these are two high-profile Republicans who have run into some legal challenges.
You know, one thing that you see in Georgia, and this has been true for a very long time, is that the prosecutors, particularly the federal prosecutors, they'll often go after a high-profile white official and then a high-profile African-American official. There's a racial balance to how they do it and how they approach it. Like whenever a person of one race gets indicted, I think somebody from the other one's going to get it pretty soon. Something bad's coming down the line for them.
All right, well, we have another bizarre case out of Cobb County to discuss. A Marietta City Councilman, Reggie Copeland, was arrested after he wouldn't hand over his driver's license and he wouldn't get out of his vehicle at the scene of an accident. Now, Denise Dillon actually caught up with his dad, and here's what his dad had to say. All right, well, hopefully we will get to that sound. But who wants to weigh in on this one first? Alexis, this is kind of bizarre. He's a pastor. He's
Right.
well known in the community.
Yeah, and also the accident, he was involved in the accident, and the person who hit him was the person that got charged. So I don't know exactly why he didn't want to cooperate with the police, but he didn't. It is a little bit strange, so we'll see what happens.
I think we'll know more once we see the video from
so
the police
it's
camera.
a lot of unanswered questions, but I will tell you this. I think that what you see is, from what we've known in Georgia, when politicians get pulled over and they have an incident, you know, do you immediately say, hey, I'm a councilman or I'm a commissioner or I'm a governor or a mayor, or do you just kind of comply as a regular citizen? So we don't really know what happened here, but this is very bizarre.
Well, here's that sound that I promised I want you guys to hear.
He's a preacher. He ain't supposed to be like that.
I know. He's also a city councilman.
Yeah. I'm gonna whoop him. He ain't too big for me to whoop him. That's my son.
He might want to fear his dad more than the police at this point, Brian.
Yeah, father knows best. Listen to your dad. Hey, one of my first pieces of advice to anybody who's in public office or running for public office: if you are arrested, if you are pulled over, do not say, "Do you know who I am?"
Right.
That is rule number one. Do not do that. It never goes well.
And I don't think he did that in this case, but I mean, again, it's just kind of bizarre because he didn't hand over his driver's license, and as someone who's actually been pulled over before, one of the things I'm taught to do is keep your hands on the steering wheel and ask for the officer, hey, is it okay for me to get my driver's license or my registration or insurance? And so, again, it's bizarre. But his father, oh my God, I mean, he went back to the days we're gonna whoop him. I hadn't heard that term in a long time.
I haven't either, but I remember
it.
Well, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms signed legislation to close the Atlanta City Jail. The question is, what's next? Now, she's forming a task force to figure out just what to do with the building once the jail closes. Theron, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are applauding the mayor for basically doing what she said she was going to do. A similar campaign promise like Governor Kemp that was made. I think that she felt like this city of Atlanta should not be in the jail business. You have a 471 square foot building that can be used for something else. But here's the catch, Lori.
Okay.
What's going to be very interesting is that this task force is going to come back with a recommendation. But this is what I would say, and I'm hearing from the opposite side, is that what are you going to do with these hard-working men and women who are currently working at this detention center, working at this jail, who's working at Grady? We talked about this once before. I complimented a person who unfortunately passed away too soon, how these people go around, they help the homeless, they give people opportunities to have food and shelter them during the cold months. And so it's got to be a smooth and fair process with the current employees who've been there, some of them 10, 20 years, and now all of them can retire. What do you do to make sure that process is smooth?
That's going to be a sticky process, too, going forward.
Right.
Well, 9 Gwinnett County educators are out after allegations of cheating on the Georgia milestones. We'll talk about it coming up.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Several Gwinnett County educators, 3 administrators, and 6 teachers either retired or resigned after accusations of cheating involving the Georgia Milestones test. Now, this all happened at Grace Snell Middle School. This really wasn't about changing answers. Kids were allowed to use a study sheet, a violation of the rules. I think this just goes back to, obviously they did wrong, right? They violated the rules, but it goes back to just too much standardized testing.
Well, also what I'm interested to see is this case in Gwinnett County, is it going to be investigated with the amount of rigor that we saw in the APS cheating scandal? While it may not be striking similarities, there is some continuity there. And so I think that what is happening in Gwinnett County that is trying to do its best to, continue to promote this very good image in a school system where a lot of people move there to put their kids in that public school system. And so I'm really waiting to see how this investigation is conducted, not only from an education standpoint, let's see how the media treats this, because you may remember, Lori, you were covering.
Well, yes, because there's a big difference there between giving kids a study sheet versus having test changing answer parties.
Well, but what the investigation is going to unveil is, was it just that? And I'm not accusing them of anything.
That's
I think the teacher, being a teacher in this society is one of the most noble jobs you can have. But I'm just very interested. I like to stir up things. Let's see how this is conducted in the press, and let's see if it's going to be with the same amount of rigor.
I want to stand up for the teachers, not for cheating, and that's not okay. But when you have numerous ones doing it in one school, you can assume there's some pressure from above to do it, right?
Yes.
And I know if you are in your 20s or 30s and you're making ends meet, you probably are going to do what you're told to do by your boss. And so I have sympathy there. But also what I want to know is if it's happening in this school, it's probably happening all over the state. Look, Gwinnett County is as well run of a school system as any in the country. The superintendent there is fantastic. And one thing that I'm super proud of as a Georgian is, Gwinnett County is now majority minority county, and its schools are still knocking it out of the park with scores. Demographic groups that do poorly in other parts of the state are doing great in Gwinnett. So I hope this doesn't besmirch that image, and I hope they keep doing the great things they're doing.
Well, and I feel for the students because they have to retake the test.
Yeah,
this is not good.
All right.
So
I want to move on to Marta because we have a lot to talk about. 2 rapid bus transit lines, an extension of the streetcar, Marta station renovations. Those could be the first projects out of the gate in Marta's expansion plans, but perhaps no Clifton Corridor project until 2035. Alexis, there's going to be a lot of controversy.
a lot of controversy, and it's going to be interesting to see if this plan holds up and not gets changed. So, but it's just very interesting that they're putting the emphasis on buses instead of light rail or even heavier.
Well, Brian, I think back to the T-Splosh days. When you come up with any project list, is anybody happy?
Never. I mean, it is the most thankless task that there is. And even if you ask people to vote on it, they're not going to want to do that either. Nobody wants to make these hard decisions. You are seeing a movement toward these rapid buses where you're, in some cases, creating lanes just for these buses. Now, that's expensive, but it's still much less expensive than building rail is. And I think there's probably a little leeriness with MARTA, given how much bad publicity there's been around the track from the MLK area down, the streetcar down to downtown.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. If they expand the streetcar, will people actually use it, Theron?
Yeah, they will. And listen, I want to make MARTA
They're not using it now.
Yeah, well, they will. They do use it, and they'll use it more. But the thing also,
They don't use it.
It's free if they don't use it.
It was free.
Can I get my points
Yes.
out, guys? Just trying to conduct the show here. No, but no. The other thing that I think that yes, it is bus rapid transit. But if you look at Campbellton Road, this is something that Councilwoman Marcia Overstreet has made, I think, front and center her community to say, hey, we got to expand transit to here. You also look at they're going to renovate the Bakehead station. They're also going to do something in 5 Points. They're going to do something in Krog Street, Beltline East Side Trail. So yes, there's more to just putting more buses, but we need to have more alternative ways for mobility in the city. So I think what you saw is that Marta's saying, all right, let's look at the areas. This Clifton Road corridor is an important initiative, but to see them put Campbellton Road on the south side of Atlanta with those folks and folks that I know and I've lived over there that really needs expanded transit, I think it's going to be welcoming arms. And I think MARTA understands that you got to have bus rapid transit. Now the streetcar, it is a sore subject. A lot of folks have spent a lot of time trying to diminish the significance of it. But I remember back in 2008, 2009, 2010, when we were trying to get federal funding, the streetcar was one of the big projects around the nation that people brought in. Now, the ridership, that's a whole other conversation. But I think they'll do a good job of trying to make sure it's connected.
And I want to get in just one more quick item that I want to discuss, and that's another federal judge has cleared the way, another hurdle for the Fair Fight action on a separate lawsuit this week, Brian.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it. I've said this all along. I'm fine with that case proceeding forward because I think Georgia's record will speak for itself in court. I am fine for us defending what we've done because we have a great record. Governor Kemp's record as Secretary of State has been so unfairly besmirched. We had record turnout. We've had record registration. You see minorities voting at the same level as white voters in this state. It is a record that if a Democrat had it, they would be heralding how successful they've been in expanding the voting base.
I am heralding Stacey Abrams for being so successful in getting out.
It happened under Brian Kemp's role as Secretary of State.
And that's because he purged over a million votes.
He implemented the law that purges people who have moved, who are inactive, people who have died. It's an important part of maintaining the process. States all over the country do it. It's been upheld by the courts. It's a fair process.
Well, all I know is that for over 200 years, every 50 years or so, there is an effort to withdraw and repress the black vote in Georgia.
And we're all against that.
And I'm going to wrap it up there because I want to leave time for winners and losers, and that's coming up straight ahead.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Since Brian is our guest panelist, we will start with you.
My winner this week is the Atlanta Braves and Suntrust Park and former Cobb County Commission Chairman Tim Lee, whose vision made all this possible for getting the Major League All-Star Game in a couple of years. And Atlanta's got a string of success on this. We're also bidding right now for the World Cup at Mercedes-Benz in 2026, which would be massive. And the Atlanta Sports Council does a great job, and they deserve a lot of praise because we are winning. We're not tired of winning yet, as the president would say.
Well, a lot of our Facebook viewers were weighing in on the stadium. Monica Henson, Rosser Sutherland also calling that a big win. Theron.
So my first winner is going to be Attorney General Chris Carr and Governor Brian Kemp. They created the Human Trafficking Prosecution Unit this week, and so that's a big issue that Governor Kemp and Attorney General Carr has said they're going to tackle. I think that Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom is doing a lot on that issue as well.
And let it be known, you just complimented 2 Republicans there.
I did. My friends on Facebook, they don't think I compliment Republicans, but it's okay. And then another big winner is Judge Shandina Morris. You may remember we talked about this a little bit on the show, but she was selected and appointed by Governor Kemp as the DeKalb County Superior Court judge. Judge Gail Flake retired, so I want to definitely make Shandina Morris a big winner. And then lastly, I want to really make sure I pronounce this right. Hushton. It's not a win or lose situation. I just really encourage the citizens there and the elected officials to really get together. This is an ongoing issue about comments that were made about African American who wanted to work for this town, and you see people still turning out. So I just employ them to really bring some stability to this conversation, but really try to come up with a solution to move that town forward, because it's really gotten a national black eye with some of the alleged racist comments that have been made.
I've been so proud to see many people in that community speak out against those comments and say it's not right. That has been very reassuring.
It has
And
been good.
Alexis.
Okay, I'm going to congratulate the mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, and the city of Atlanta for the wonderful jazz festival that happened over the Memorial Day weekend. Everybody came out to Piedmont Park and had a great time. And also congratulate her on closing the city jail and repurposing that facility.
All right. I've got Carol Tomei, who was the Home Depot CFO. She's retiring. Congratulations to her, because she's really a stellar part of the community, has done so much. And a fallen Gwinnett police dog, Eli, lost his life after trying to get a suspect, died of heat exhaustion. So that's it for this week. Phil will be here next week. We'll see you then.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.